Sometimes the business is not the problem. The owner is. Not because the business stopped making money, it's because they're tired. And a lot of owner operators do not admit this early enough. Partly because they built their entire adult life around continuing, solving problems, showing up. That becomes their identity after 30 years, especially for men who built businesses the hard way. Business owners can be worth 10, $20 million or more while still dealing with $100 decisions inside the business every day. So, what often happens is the owner keeps saying, maybe one more year. Then another year passes, then another. And eventually, the conversation about selling the business is no longer happening from a position of strength. They could be taking 10, 20, 50, even $100 million off the table, but they hold on, thinking generational handover is the way to go. Unfortunately, the conversation often comes too late. Cancer, a family emergency, burnout. The owner quietly hit a wall. That's the part people rarely discuss honestly. A lot of businesses do not get sold because the timing was perfect. They get sold because the owner could not carry the pressure at the same level anymore. They realize that blowing up the balloon forever doesn't always work. And by the time they admit that, they are already depleted. This is not weakness. Usually, it is the opposite. Most long-term business owners carried stress levels employees never even saw. Payroll stress, tax pressure, bad debt, staff problems, economic cycles, personal guarantees, cash flow pressure, year after year. And a lot of them did it quietly, particularly in owner-led businesses where the owner never fully disconnected mentally from the operation. Even on holiday, they were still half inside the business. Eventually, that catches up with people. Sometimes slowly, sometimes all at once. One thing I notice quite often is owners delaying their transition because the business still technically works. You have people in their 70s still managing operations like they're 35. Revenue still comes in, customers still buy, staff still show up, so externally, everything looks stable. But internally, the owner's energy has changed completely. They stop wanting growth. They stop wanting complexity. They stop wanting more staff, especially with today's difficult HR laws. Small problems feel heavier than they used to. That's usually an important signal. But a lot of owners ignore it because they think, as long as the business is still profitable, I should keep going. Maybe. But there is still a difference between continuing because you want to and continuing because you no longer know how to stop. These are very different emotional states. And this is where identity becomes dangerous because many owners did not just build a business, they built a role. A business gave structure, status, usefulness. So stepping back can feel psychologically threatening, even when it is financially possible. Very little gets said about what happens when somebody who solved problems every day for 30 years suddenly starts imagining life without that role that organized their entire identity. That transition is bigger than most people expect. The difficult part is that owner exhaustion eventually starts affecting the business itself, usually subtly at first. Negative things begin happening. Decision making slows down. Important conversations get delayed. Reinvestment gets postponed. Financials become messier. Staff problems sit unresolved for longer. And new talent doesn't enter the frame. Sometimes the owner becomes more reactive, more withdrawn. They stop planning properly because mentally they are already halfway out. But operationally, they are still fully responsible. That creates a strange middle state. I had a 40-year-old business under contract a few years ago. It used to be a $20 million enterprise, but it had fallen from grace to $3 million, and it was trading insolvent. And staff often feel the shift before the owner says anything openly. That energy changes, the urgency changes. The owner who once pushed everything forward now starts protecting energy instead. and understandably. But buyers notice this too. Experienced buyers are not just assessing financials, they are assessing momentum. And businesses where the owner is emotionally exhausted often begin developing operational hesitation around them. Not because the business is bad, it's because leadership energy affects systems more than people realize, particularly in founder led businesses. And why owners wait too long? A lot of owners wait too long for one simple reason. They assume there will eventually be a moment where they suddenly feel emotionally ready to leave. Usually, that moment never arrives cleanly because the business became psychologically fused to the owner over decades. Especially in New Zealand, owner led businesses where the owner built the place personally, the staff feel like extended family, customers know them directly, and walking away from that is not a normal financial transaction. It is an identity adjustment. And many owners postpone it because staying feels emotionally easier than confronting the uncertainty of what comes next. Even if staying is slowly draining them, that is the trap. Sometimes owners tell themselves, I'll think about transition after the next good year. Then another year passes, then another. Meanwhile, energy keeps falling quietly in the background. And eventually the business enters a market later than ideal, not because the numbers collapsed, because the owner ran out of emotional capacity first. And that happens more often than people think. There's another layer to this that people do not discuss very openly, particularly with men. A lot of male business owners are deeply uncomfortable with the idea of no longer being needed. Not financially, psychologically. Their businesses became the place where they are respected and useful. And once that disappears, many owners quietly wonder, who exactly am I without this? That question can delay transitions for years, especially for practical men who are not naturally reflective or emotionally expressive. So instead of dealing with the question directly, they continue operating, even when enthusiasm has largely disappeared, even when the body is signaling fatigue clearly, even when the business itself would probably transition better earlier rather than later. And this one reason some owners become strangely resistant to succession planning. And the best transitions usually start earlier. The healthiest transitions usually begin before exhaustion becomes severe. Not after cancer strikes, not after forgetfulness sets in, because owners think more clearly when they still have energy and patience. Sometimes it takes a new partner to revitalize your energy. That creates better outcomes for everyone. Staff feel safer, customers experience continuity, the owner feels less trapped, the buyer gets a healthier business, and more importantly, the owner gets time to psychologically adjust gradually, rather than falling off a cliff suddenly after settlement. A lot of successful transitions are actually slow reductions in intensity, not abrupt disappearances. The owner moves from 5 days to 4 to 3 to strategic involvement only, sometimes over years. And that gradual shift often works far better emotionally than trying to sever identity overnight. Because most owners do not actually want to become irrelevant. They simply want the pressure level to reduce and to take some money off the table. A business can still look healthy externally while the owner is struggling internally. This is part of why I think business transitions need to be approached more calmly and earlier than they usually are. Not as emergency events, not as I need to get out immediately, more as what would a healthy transition actually look like over time. For many owners, the ideal outcome is not disappearing overnight. It is reducing pressure while preserving dignity and continuity. That usually requires planning earlier than most people expect. And some owners are ready now and others are years away. Both are fine. The important thing is recognizing exhaustion before it quietly starts driving the business itself. So if you own a business doing over $1 million a year and you've started feeling more tired than excited, and maybe worth paying attention to that earlier rather than later. Take some money off the table, split your problems with someone who still relishes the details and the challenge, because sometimes the business is still functioning well long after the owner stopped functioning well inside it. And that gap can quietly become the risk of its own. So look up businessbridge.co.nz.